The freedom of Christians does not arise as a political theory. It does not arise as a social claim. It does not arise from an armed revolution or an ideological manifesto. It arises from a vision of the human being. And this vision is written at the very beginning of the Bible. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. This sentence is a fracture in the history of humanity. Before it, human beings were valued for what they did, for the role they occupied, for the strength they possessed. With the Bible, something radically new happens. Every human being is valued for what he or she is. If man is made in the image and likeness of God, then his dignity does not depend on any human power. It does not depend on the king. It does not depend on the state. It does not depend on religion itself. It depends on God. And since no man is God, no man can possess another man. No one can reduce him to a means. No one can use him as a tool. Here arises the idea that every human being must be respected as my equal, not as my natural enemy, not as my inferior, not as my object. From here arises the idea that every human being is the holder of rights simply by being human. Not because he belongs to a people, not because he professes a faith, not because he obeys a law, but because he exists and carries within himself the taste of God. When Israel is enslaved in Egypt, God does not send Moses to negotiate better conditions. He sends him to break the slavery. Let my people go, he says. First liberation, then the law. Always this way. God does not educate slaves. He frees free men. The law comes afterward to guard and regulate freedom, not to replace it. Because a law given to a slave is only another chain. This is the biblical root of every personal and individual freedom. And it is from here that everything else is born. This vision of the human being runs through the entire Bible. It is never abandoned. It is never denied. The prophets speak against kings when they crush the human being. Not because the king has no power, but because power is not absolute. What is man that you are mindful of him? Asks the psalm. And it answers, you have made him little less than the angels, and crowned him with glory and honor. This is the biblical vision of the human being. A fragile being, yet the bearer of a dignity that surpasses the world. When Jesus arrives, this vision is not corrected. It is brought to fulfillment. Jesus never encounters masses. He encounters persons. He calls them by name. He sees in the people he meets interlocutors capable of speaking the language of God. It does not matter whether they are saints or sinners. Zacchaeus, the hated tax collector. The Samaritan woman, a woman and a foreigner. The man born blind, the leper, the adulteress. He imposes faith on no one. He offers freedom to everyone. If you want to follow me, this is the grammar of the gospel. Jesus never coerces. He proposes. For Jesus, truth is not imposed by force, because a truth imposed does not set free. The truth will set you free, but only those who are free can receive it. Before the adulterous woman, Jesus does not deny the law, but he refuses to let the law become an instrument of violence. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. One by one, they leave. A woman remains, free before God. Jesus is the archetype of every human being, true man and true God. In him, the human and the divine are not erased. They meet. This means that every human being is called to something greater than mere survival. He is not only flesh. He is not only instinct. He is not only production. He is a person. From here arises the Christian idea of freedom of conscience. No one can believe in my place. No one can choose in my place. Faith, if it is not free, is not faith. It is conformity. It is fear. It is external obedience. Christianity rejects all of this because God does not want programmed servants. He wants children. And it is precisely this vision that over time generates Western civilization. A civilization founded on the idea that man has rights prior to the state, rights that the state does not create but recognizes. Freedom of conscience, religious freedom, personal freedom. All these freedoms are born here, in the Judeo-Christian vision of the human being. Even when the West denies its Jewish and Christian roots, it continues to live from their fruits. It continues to speak of rights. It continues to speak of freedom. But it often forgets where they come from. There is, however, a point that must be stated clearly, because Christian freedom is not an abstract idea. It is a concrete vision of the human being, and therefore it produces concrete consequences in history. Not all religious visions see the human being in the same way. Without attacking anyone, it is right to acknowledge the differences. In Islam, the human being is not made in the image and likeness of God. God is absolutely other. Man is a submitted creature. This entails a decisive difference. Rights are not original. They do not belong to man as man. They are obtained by adhering to the community of believers. If you fully belong to the community of believers, that is, if you are Muslim, you will have rights. If you belong partially to the community of believers, that is, if you are Christian or Jewish, you will have fewer. If you do not belong to the community of believers, that is, if you are atheist, you will have no rights. In Christianity, the opposite happens. Dignity precedes adherence. Rights come before faith, because they come from the human being himself, who is the image of God. This is why all the great modern freedoms are born in the West, not because of automatic moral superiority, but because of a precise cultural root. The West is born from the Bible, even when it forgets it. The idea that every man has inviolable rights. The idea that the state is not absolute. The idea that conscience comes before the law. All of this is unthinkable without the Judeo-Christian vision. Jesus, true man and true God, is the archetype of every human being. In him we see that man is not closed within the earth, but open to heaven. This does not mean that man is God, but it means that man is called to participate in the life of God. For this reason, every man is both human and in potential divine, and therefore free. Freedom is not a secondary detail. It is the space in which man can seek the truth. Without freedom, there are no choices, there are only impositions. Without freedom, there is no responsibility, there is only external obedience. For this reason, free will is not a problem to be solved. It is the heart of the relationship between God and man. God calls. He does not force. Man can respond, or he can refuse. And it is precisely this possibility that makes faith authentic. If God had wanted blind obedience, he would have created automatons. If he had wanted only submission, he would have created slaves. Instead, he created free men. Freedom is the risk God accepts out of love for man. Because without freedom, there is no love. And without love, there is no relationship. For this reason, in the Bible, God always calls. He never imposes. Choose life that you may live. The choice is left to man. Christianity is not a religion of imposition. It is a religion of response. a response to a call, a response to a promise, a response to a love that comes first. This is why the entire liberal vision of life is, in its deepest core, Christian. Not because everyone must believe, but because the very idea of freedom is born here. It is born from the idea that man is not the property of anyone. It is born from the idea that conscience comes before power. It is born from the idea that truth cannot be imposed by force. Without this vision, freedom becomes mere arbitrariness, or it becomes a privilege granted from above. With this vision, freedom becomes responsibility. It becomes the place where man grows. He grows by choosing. He grows by making mistakes. He grows by returning. Christianity does not promise a world without errors. It promises a world in which error does not have the last word. For this reason, Christian freedom does not eliminate evil by force. It overcomes it by transforming man from within. Jesus does not conquer the world with weapons. He crosses it with the cross. And even there, until the very last moment, he leaves space for freedom. Today you will be with me in paradise, said to a man who chooses at the last moment. This is the measure of Christian freedom. A freedom that does not exhaust itself in politics. It does not exhaust itself in law. It does not exhaust itself in history. It is a freedom that is born from recognizing who we are. Image of God. Brothers among ourselves. Responsible before the truth. And precisely for this reason, truly free.